All right, so going to the cut view, we're looking at Abbott Park. Again, having a better day than I did yesterday, but always dealing with cognitive issues. So hopefully I'll get into the flow here and everything will be fine. I got no idea what this story is going to be, but every story begins with well, I do have some idea. I have character names. I kind of have a beginning of the story, a premise, I guess you'd say. Um, but every story begins with a blank page. This one has at the top Abbott Park and by Jay Wilburn. So thank you for being here, and let me tell you a story. All right. Tim Nestor had never gone home on his own. He used to ride the bus, but there were kids on there who picked on him. Some days, Dad could drive him to school, and Mom. All right, I need to capitalize Dad and Mom because we're using them in place of their names. If I said his dad or his mom, it would be different. All right. So some days Dad could drive him to school, and Mom would pick him up later. Let's make this a new paragraph. Tim's older brother, Alex, was fine riding the bus. There was a long conversation at home about why Alex couldn't keep Tim safe from the bullies. Alex said it wasn't that simple. Mom and Dad weren't satisfied with that answer. But Tim got it. Alex eventually could brush the other kids off of his brother, but he couldn't fight everyone. It was complicated. Dad decided it was simple enough. Alex could walk to school with his brother and walk him home on the days Mom and Dad couldn't get him there or pick him up. Alex didn't like it, but he accepted it on the days he had to babysit Tim. Let's say, to Alex's credit, he never took it out on his brother. Today was Alex's day. Tim thought it was, but as the day, let's say the afternoon, as the afternoon drew on and the school cleared out. Today was Alex's day. Tim thought it was, but as the afternoon drew on and the school cleared out, he wasn't sure of anything. The office was closed, and this was before kids carried phones. He couldn't call mom or dad to see if they had forgotten. He couldn't call home to see if Alex forgot. His hope, this is too much prelude. I'm gonna have to take some of it out, but that's all right. His hope was that let's get a little more. Let's add some detail here. As his shadow grew long and finally touched the brick at the base of the school's front wall, he hoped one of them would realize Tim was missing and come get him. It was a cold day to top everything off, and clouds took out the sun and his long shadow. The darkness grew heavy and gray. He knew if he waited long enough, someone would have to come. He also knew his brother would be in trouble, and though he wouldn't take it out on Tim, and though he wouldn't take it out on his little brother, Tim didn't want to give Alex another reason to see him as a burden instead of a pal. If he was going to go home on his own for the first time ever, he should have left much sooner. The sun had still been out. The day was still new. People were still around. But he had no way of knowing this would be the day he was forgotten until much later. As he as he closed his puffy orange coat around himself and unlocked his red bicycle from the rack, he found himself wishing he had just faced the teasing and torment of the bus ride home. It was hard to move his arms in that big coat, but he wrestled his bike lock into his backpack, already overstuffed with books, notebooks. No, let's do it this way. Books, a trapper keeper. Because again, we've set this in a time before phones, so we really need to get serious about this. All right, a trapper keeper and a ton of homework. He was already late starting. The last boy mounted the last bike and started the first wobbly revolutions of his first solo ride home from school. Other kids his age went home on their own already. Okay, I'm gonna make that a new paragraph. All right. Other kids his age went home on their own already, but they left at the same time as everyone else. Okay. Crossing guards watched them the first few blocks. A cop usually sat in his car crossing guards watched them the first few blocks. A cop usually sat in his car on the main street leading deeper into the city, the opposite direction Tim peddled now. Parents were walking with some kids, and even even the ones walking alone were sort of in the midst of every other kid walking alone. As the school slowly rolled back behind Tim's stretched pack and puffy coat, he rode truly alone. Even shops were closing up at this point. A few cars flew by with swirls of lukewarm exhaust. And every few of those already had their headlights on. It could just be because of the clouds, he told himself, but he knew it wasn't just that. This was a bad hour to start out a bike ride home. He knew. All right, I want to put one more sentence here. Let me get my thoughts together. Okay, it was a bad hour to start out a bike ride home. He knew. What else did I want to say? Oh gosh, I've lost my train of thought. I knew this was going to happen. Okay. But he knew it wasn't just that. This was a bad hour to start a bike ride home. He knew. Okay. It was a kid snatching hour and would only be darker and worse the longer he took. Tim tried to pick up speed. But he couldn't really maintain going much faster than he already was. He kept a steady pace, except when he crossed streets. The sun continued its pace down below. No, let's say 2 down below. 2 down below the edge of the world. For a moment, it was just a quick moment. Tim let out a thick, wet sob from deep in his throat. Maybe down in his aching chest, just above his fluttering stomach. It was a bitter, hitching sob of a scared child about to go into hysterics. He kept pedaling kept pedaling and bit down on that sadness until his cheeks hurt and the tears still leaked slowly from the pain and self-hating anger. These were the kind of tears he fought back when the kids ganged up on him in the bus. Those moments he waited for Alex to finally say, "That's enough, guys." Like it was all some big joke. Sometimes that did it, and other times the poking, the teasing, and the torture continued. Alright, I know I'm spending a lot of time on this kid crying, but I want to build up to the real terror that may come in the story. Alright, bit down on his sadness. The guy's picking on him. So these are the kind of tears. These were the kind. Well, let me fix this while I'm trying to figure out what I'm saying next. These are the kind of tears he fought back when the kids ganged up on him on the bus. Those moments he waited for Alex to finally say, "That's enough, guys." Okay. Tim had grown to realize there was no kind of tears, no kind of reaction that made it all stop. People were kind most of the time, but when they were cruel or indifferent, no amount of tears changed them. Adults ignored kids. They walked past crying kids. They turned their heads when kids were picking on another crying kid in the street or in a park. Tim had his arm twisted up behind his back one time, and a couple stared for a moment. Tim had his arm twisted up behind his back one time, and a couple stared for a moment before deciding to go on and not get involved. Tim was on his own now, but he was always on his own with his scared and hurt tears all along. Oh, that's bitterly sad, isn't it? Alright, let's see what happens next. He finally reached the cross street that opened into the walkway leading into Abbott Park. Tim had seen pictures of Central Park way up in New York. Dad said Abbott Park was nowhere near that big. Okay, hold on. But it looked that big to Tim. In another way, it looked bigger. Tim had seen pictures of logging roads through thick, untamed forest. Much of Abbott Park looked that way to him from the inside. Old trees, untouched by an axe, leaned over the walkways through parts of the park, swallowing everything in shadows, even when the sun was shining. The sun wasn't shining. The day wasn't new. And Abbott Park looked endless from out here. Let me do another comma. Like the terrible woods in The Hobbit. Which Tim enjoyed. I think I got a running sentence here. The sun wasn't shining, the day wasn't new, and Abbott Park looked endless. From out here, like the terrible woods in The Hobbit, which Tim enjoyed. All right, that's enough. I was going to keep rolling with that sentence, but I don't need any more. Unfortunately, his house was on the opposite side. Walking through, let's hold on. Riding his bike next to his big brother as Alex walked or jogged alongside in the mornings was quite pleasant. Even at night, no, not night, even in the afternoon, on the way back, it wasn't any big deal. It was a very big deal now. He could go around the outside. There were sidewalks most of the way around but not all the way. He'd be in the street, and it would be real dark by the time he finished that long loop. He had to go through. Tim shivered from the cold, even inside his big coat, but it wasn't all because of the cold. The longer I wait, Tim's voice shook in a way that brought shame. He already felt his share of it from all the crying. Tim kicked off and crossed the street. He was already on the other side before he remembered he had failed to look both ways. There was no traffic, but his folks would kill him anyway if they knew. He had other danger to deal with, so he pedaled on into the deep shadows of the first brick path into Abbott Park. All right. Okay, now we gotta scare this kid a little more. I feel bad for him. I don't think I've been nice in this story, so let's see what we can do. Maybe things will turn out okay for him, but I'm not positive. All right. Every motion from both sides sent his head whipping one way or the other to try to see what was coming at him on this lonely path. His hood made it difficult to see from the sides. He pulled it back, but the coat was so puffy that it kept riding back up onto his head. He was just seeing things, he told himself. Everything looked in motion. I'll say looked to be. Everything looked to be in motion because he was in motion. Everything looked to be in motion because he was in motion. brick trail gave way to dirt. The brick trail gave way to dirt. He knew from countless passages back and forth through here that this was supposed to happen, but he still felt like it was wrong. But he still felt like it was wrong. The trail was too narrow. The trees were too close on both sides. The signs and the trash cans were wrong. There was a maze of trails through here, and he had taken a wrong turn. He was sure, even though there were no turns yet. Okay. He could go back now. He'd get back out of the park at the end of the main road. If he didn't keep going and get himself more lost. But that was the sort of logic that most panicked kids could not reach in their moments of need. No, the drive to keep going, to keep running forward, was always imperative. Tim didn't know it, but many adults suffered the same problem when they were lost. He emerged into a wider dirt road where the trees broke open above a broad cross of an intersection between paths. This was the right way. Tim couldn't figure out why it had looked so wrong before. The cross trail ended on both sides, not too far in either direction. There were other trails that led to creeks and ponds in both directions. Now we'll say both ways. Okay. Three blue vehicle. No, yeah, let me do a new paragraph. 3 blue vehicles. They weren't the same models, but they were all sport utility vehicles and all the same shade of blue. One was parked crooked down one way, and the other two were parked together down the other. No one was around. A lost kid, a desperate kid, would be justified in seeking help from adults. But this felt like a trap. There was no reason to think that other than the stranger danger imprinted on his young mind. Okay. Got an extra letter there, so I'll fix that. Alright, imprinted on his young mind. But the color bothered him too. People trying to hurt him wouldn't necessarily all drive the same color vehicles, but he took it as a warning. Tim heard voices down one way. And crunching footsteps from the other. He leaned forward, tilted his head down, and peddled as, okay, let me see if I can spell peddled correctly. Peddled as fast and as hard as he could between the blue strangers. He was an orange and red shape speeding off through Abbott Park alone. Okay, rolling right along here. Concrete paths. I keep hitting every single thing except what I need. Concrete paths. Picked up where the dirt gave out, just like they had every other time he had made this trip home from school with his big brother. But Alex wasn't here. So even though he knew the concrete paths were next and were right, they felt wrong. He did not stop. He did not slow. He just kept going. Okay. A section of swings came up on the left. Mothers were gathering their younger children for the trek home themselves. This seemed late for families to be out. Tim supposed he was sometimes out this late with his own family, but he was alone, and the clouds made it feel later. Was it before dinner or after? It had to be before, otherwise his family would be looking for him. Maybe they were looking. Maybe they were at the school and yelling at Alex because Tim was gone along with his red bike. He thought about asking some of the mothers for help, even if they didn't want to help, even if they were in a hurry. They would have to help him. Even if they didn't want to help, even if they were in a hurry, they would have to help him. Mothers always helped when asked because they would want their own kids helped too. All right. There were a few men too, though. The women weren't scared, so those had to be trusted husbands, fathers, and or boyfriends. Still, all the men wore blue coats. Tim knew he was being crazy with fear, but all those cars had been blue, and now the coats were blue. It felt like a warning. Warnings were there for a reason. Tim left that patch of playground equipment behind as he kept pondering his choices. Even if he did seek their help, they would ask where he lived. He'd have to point down this middle path and say that his home was right on the other side of the park. A park not even close to as big as Central Park. The parents of other kids would just stare at him and say, well, keep going and you'll get there, kid, right? Besides, they were already cleared out now, and Tim was riding alone. Okay. The path wound one way and then the other. Tim concentrated until his head hurt to be sure he stayed on the right path. Every move felt wrong, but his muscles told him this was the right way. Why was it taking forever then? Okay. Why was it taking forever then? He was on his bike. He was getting tired and slowing down, especially on the uphills. But he was riding faster than he did with his brother. Since he didn't have to match pace with his walking brother, he could go as fast as his turning feet would take him on his red bike. Fear was a good motivator to keep those pedals turning. Still, it seemed to be taking forever to get through this park. He heard footsteps, pounding, running toward him. It took everything in him not to pee himself or fall right off the bike in faint. He spotted the woman running, no, let's say jogging. We'll keep it less threatening, I guess. He spotted the woman jogging toward him up a bricked incline from under one of the arcing walking bridges. She was an adult, but still younger than his parents. She could be high school aged, but probably college or older. Kids Tim's age were never good at judging how old adults really were. Okay. She was pretty, though. Beautiful, really. Alright. She showed skin, even though... Hold on. She showed skin and looked sweaty, even though it was a cold day. Her tight running clothes were blue, as were her running shoes. Blue was Tim's new color for fear, but she was a woman, and she might help a scared little boy. Maybe she would run beside him the rest of the way home. She met eyes with Tim, where he peeked out sideways over the edge of his annoying hood. Then she turned around. The turn was casual, but she ran back under that bridge and away faster and she had been approaching him. Tim stopped pedaling and coasted a while as he watched her go. Alright. She could have been planning to turn around anyway. She could have been planning to turn around anyway. It was getting late, and she needed to get home too. Still, it didn't feel like that. When she when she met eyes with Tim, he recognized fear mirrored there. If kids had reason to fear being snatched, maybe girls had reason to be afraid even when they got older. Places like Abbott Park might hold terror for more people than Tim had thought. Okay, she was afraid of me. His words didn't shake this time, but he heard puzzled wonder in his own voice. He was no threat to anyone. He was only here because he couldn't even ride his own school bus home without getting picked on. Okay, he was only here because he couldn't even ride his own school bus home without getting picked on. But she didn't know that any more than he knew which adults were helpful and which were the strangers he was always warned about. The realization of her fear, the fact that fear of facing the world alone did not leave you as an adult automatically, was terrifying to him on an existential level. He started to wonder if his dad, now this would be lowercase now because I'm saying his dad. He started to wonder if his dad felt fear like that too. If dads could be afraid like this, was there anywhere in the world that you could be safe? God, why did one of you not remember to bring me home from school? Okay. Why did one of you not remember to bring me home from school? Okay. Tim stood up on his pedals and fought his way up another steep incline between himself and his house. He could walk his bike over some of these hills. He sometimes did that to and from school with the protection of his brother beside him. But he had no intention of setting a single foot down in this park. He was going to pedal all the way home before he considered resting. Does Alex sometimes feel this afraid? Tim wondered in horror. Maybe he doesn't stand up for me on the bus because he's afraid of the same things I am, Tim thought. With fear coursing through him like an undirected electrical current, he pedaled harder on the downhill instead of just coasting with gravity. On the next flat section, Tim steered through the wide curve. As he passed a trash can on one side and a bench, say a green bench, we're doing a lot with colors here, and a green bench on the other, the lamps along the path lit up a ghostly white. The lights. Why were the lights already on? He hoped it was the clouds, but he suspected it was too dark to be that. He was pedaling through Abbott Park all alone at night. How had it become nighttime? Tim cried openly now as he hauled through one circle of spilled light to another. The park felt deserted. No, let's say looked deserted. The park looked deserted, but he felt eyes all around him. Finally, the ivy covered archway appeared in front of him, with the shadowed street and the partially lit houses beyond. His tears threatened to His tears threatened to blur out the view, but he pressed onward. This was where it would happen, he thought. This is where he'd get snatched, right within view of his own house. Just within sight of safety, because nowhere in the world was truly safe for anyone at any age. All right, we're almost done here. Poor Tim. Let's see if we can get him home. He saw figures. He saw motion. Now let's do sentences. We'll split it into sentences. He saw motion. Hands reached for him out of the night blackness of those final patches. Okay, let me fix this. Final patches of foliage. All right, let's see if we can spell that right. Foliage. There we go. Reaching. They grabbed for him on both sides. Men in blue coats. they would drag him to their blue vehicles. They would drag him to their blue vehicles that looked black at this hour. Alright, we're about to end here. Let's see if we can spell some things right. That looked black at this hour. They would drag him to their blue vehicles that looked black at this hour. They would take him down unmarked trails. Good grief, come on. Unmarked trails to the edge of dark water. Then the real poking, teasing, and torture would begin. The kind of unspeakable stuff. Hold on, sorry. The kind of unspeakable stuff that would make the bus ride home seem like heaven in comparison. Tim flew through the arch, off the curb, and across the street without looking again. Even though there had been no blue monsters to grab him, he bumped up over the next curve and raced the last few houses to his driveway. See, he got home okay. Still crying, he dropped his bike with a crash next to the bumper of his mother's car. He put it away safely soon, but first he needed to escape this darkness. He ran up the steps, 2 at a time, wrestled open the glass door, and like a horror movie, he couldn't get the knob to turn. He fought. Let's do all hands. He fought and cried and sniffled, but finally decided it was really locked. He pounded on the door with both fists, screaming for help, feeling something closing in behind him. He rang the doorbell over and over the way his dad hated, hoping to bring the man faster in his anger. Still nothing. The neighbors didn't even bother to look out to see what was happening. He turned around expecting to see men in blue, but he was still entirely alone in reality. Okay. I'll say Tim. Tim shifted out of his backpack straps and clawed at the pockets. His spare key wasn't where it was supposed to be. He searched every other pocket and all around his books. He returned to the proper pocket 3 times before he decided the key wasn't there. Had he dropped it? Had someone borrowed it? He couldn't remember. Tim just sat down. His legs were watery and exhausted. Dad's car was gone. They were looking for him. So why hadn't... We're almost done here. I just need to end this a certain way. So why hadn't they left someone home in case he showed up? Dad would go look. Mom would insist on coming. Alex would have to go because he fell down on his responsibility. Still, even Tim knew someone should have stayed home. In case he showed up. They think I don't have the courage to come by myself. Tim sighed and covered his face with both hands. One last paragraph here. We're up to 3,200 words, man. This is a substantial story. All right. Literary at that. There's not even really any, I guess it qualifies as horror, but there's not even really any tropes or horror genre stuff in here. This is just kind of a literary story about a kid being afraid. All right. Tim sighed, covered his face with both hands. Maybe he should go to one of the neighbors. But who was to say any of them might not be men in blue? People who had fooled. Hold on, put a comma there. People who had fooled even his parents. Who was to say any of them could keep Tim safe from anything in the darkness that wanted to hurt him? He wondered if the jogging woman had gotten home safe. He wondered if her parents still worried about her even though she was grown. Tim just sat and waited for someone to come home and let him inside out of the cold and the cold of the night. It was full dark now.